Greetings, friends and fellow daemons, and welcome to more Daemonosophy. So the last couple of episodes, we talked about pursuing goals, and we talked about how sometimes those goals can lead towards opportunities that are unexpected. The act of moving towards a goal generates things. It tills the earth and overturns soil, exposing new possibilities for new growth. And another thing that happens is it uncovers chaos. And so in some of our other episodes, we've talked a little bit about postmodernism and other examples of how chaos manifests in the universe, cultural Marxism, Bolshevism. And in Setian terms, these would all fall under the heading of Apep, aspects of the forces of Apep in the universe, the forces of delusion and lies that exists as almost like a natural force. It's very easy when we see it to particularize it and say, oh, that's the fault of that person over there. That's the fault of those people over there. When in reality, it's really more like a force that moves, or an energy that moves through the universe that manifests through people. It's very easy for us to understand this in terms of like positive energies. We like to talk about that, how positive energies through the universe manifest in people, and people take on the forms of like, God forms and whatnot. But it also happens with negativity. Ouspensky talks about this a lot, how when you start to observe negative emotions in yourself, negative reactions in yourself and in others, and you implement the practice of trying to stop the expression, not stop the manifestation of them, because that's kind of impossible, but stopping the expression of negativity. Eventually you start to see how really negative emotions have no center, and how they simply survive by moving along from one person to the other. And this is one sense in which, by stopping the expression of them, you actually do a great service for humanity. You do a great service for the universe, because every negative emotion that you pass on to how many other people, you pass it on to how many other people, it like multiplies and multiplies and multiplies until you see what all of society and social interaction is just all this crazy quilt of intersecting lines of negativity and hatred and all those bad things. So anyhow, I want to talk today a little bit more about the origins of chaos, the origins of Apep. And again, in Setian terms, Apep is represented as a primal serpent of chaos that exists on into modern times, right? It's like the idea is that in the beginning there was just this chaos, and then as order arose from the first consciousness, or from Chronos and gods and all of that stuff, establishing order in the universe, that then, while still that stream of chaos, it still exists, it's still there, it's just not as pronounced, it's kind of moving to the background, it still has an effect on things. And in reality, its manifestations are really quite apparent, quite large, if you took a percentage of it. At least it seems that way. And this is the role of Set as the first principle of consciousness, is that he slays Apep, right? He slays delusion, he dispels delusion, he dispels lies. Consciousness, the awakening of self-consciousness, has the effect of sweeping away those lies. And that's another secret to the practice of stopping negative emotions, because even your automatic training yourself to stop negative emotions makes room for consciousness to arise. Even if that act doesn't itself create consciousness, The stopping of negative emotions creates space so that self-consciousness might be more able to arise, and that is a good thing. But in looking around at the modern manifestations of this, of the Serpent Apep, cultural Marxism, Bolshevism, postmodernism, it's easy to forget that it is an ancient phenomenon. Gurdjieff talks about this in Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. It's in the chapter Beelzebub in America, where he, very typically ironic fashion, talks about all sorts of other countries other than America. And one of those in particular he talks about is ancient Egypt. And this is where Gurdjieff introduces the idea that Bolshevism, which he mentions by name, is not a new phenomenon, that it's occurred many times in mankind's past. And he gets to here by exploring ancient Egypt. So if you look at the history of ancient Egypt, we document it, historians document it with a series of pharaohs, pharaonic successions. And one of the mistakes that people make in looking at that is the idea that, from Akhenaten to Ramses, or Ramses to Akhenaten, I can't remember. They imagine between each pharaoh there's a peaceful movement to the next pharaoh, and then another peaceful movement to the next pharaoh, because all of Egyptology is presented as this very, very orderly, very subdued sort of progress over thousands and thousands of years. And Gurdjieff says, he reminds us that's like ridiculous, and that's like totally wrong, and that in between various high societies in Egypt, there were periods of total social chaos, what he calls periods of Bolshevism. He uses Bolshevism as a word for this intervening social chaos, violence and authoritarianism, and madness that seizes humanity from time to time. So why does it seize humanity? When we're down here on the ground, as it were, it's easy to talk about it in terms of movements and philosophies and conflicting philosophies and evil people as being the cause of everything. But Gurdjieff reminds us that no people are really smart enough to be the cause of anything. No one can actually cause anything, because we're all asleep. Sleeping people can't cause things or do things willfully. They can only react and make up stories about what happened. So the real cause of Bolshevism, or social chaos, is cosmic. And this is where he introduces a very interesting word, Solioonensius. Solioonensius, which has Sol in it, and it's connected with the sun. And it's the idea that a certain kind of madness comes from the sun. And people speculate about what the science behind this is. Is that, sunspots? I mean, we do have, some of our legitimate sciences, tells us sunspots do have an effect on the electromagnetic energy on planet Earth. So there could be something to that. Another way of considering this is the ancient idea of lunacy, that there's a certain sort of madness that comes from the moon and the cycles of the moon, and the full moon is the worst The full moon is the strongest because that's when people turn into werewolves. The full moon like takes over their animal instincts within the human biology. So Solioonensius is a similar sort of madness, but the madness that this induces is one that takes place in broad daylight, and people, men decide that other men are unworthy of the gift of life and begin enslaving them or destroying their existence. And so, for the most part, Gurdjieff points to Solioonensius is really the cause between, all these great wars and periods of mass reciprocal destruction that occur on the planet Earth. So he traces it going back really ancient, So that's one resource. Another one that I'm going to point out that I bet a lot of people are already familiar with, but haven't really considered before in this light. Have you ever heard the words, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted"? These famous words are purported to be spoken by Hassan I Sabah, who's the leader of the Hashishin cults or assassin cults in ancient Arabia or Persia. This is a theme that is at the root of conspiracy theory literature in general, I would say. There's a couple of major works on secret societies and subversive movements. There's that book, Secret Societies and Subversive Movements. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's one of the famous early books on, all the famous conspiracies up to that time, which goes on up to, the Masons and stuff like that. But pretty much the godfather of all conspiracy theories is the Hashishin cult. The word Hashishin eventually becomes the word assassin. That's where the etymological connection lies. And so the way the story goes is that Hassan I Sabah, the way this cult worked is they brought in, the new recruits, and they'd get them really high on hash, and then they'd take them into a beautiful garden and tell them, hey, while they were like completely stoned out of their gourds, say, well, hey, this is a taste of heaven, and we have the key to it, the key to accessing heaven right here. So working for us in this cult is the only, smart thing to do if you want to go to heaven. So the cult was based on that, and then they utilized the cult members to go commit strategic assassinations and stuff for the, Shah or whoever the king was at the time. And also I'm sure to push, sales of hash and stuff like that. So one of the things that Hassan I Sabah is quoted as saying is, nothing is true, everything is permitted. And so good old Robert Anton Wilson was a big fan of this too, and he incorporated all of this into his very famous Illuminatus trilogy, which, if you're even talking about conspiracy theory and you haven't read Illuminatus trilogy, you need to just fucking stop right now and go back and read that fucking book, and yes, looking into conspiracy theories and following conspiracy theories used to be a practice, and only in very recent times has it been demonized as some sort of right-wing fanatical wingnut-like activity. But it used to be conspiracy theory, and study of conspiracy theory is like, that's just one thing you naturally do in the pursuit of magic, certainly in the pursuit of, left-hand path initiation. But in Illuminatus trilogy, Robert Anton Wilson, the narrative of it, if you can call it that, basically follows along two lines of all of history, and everything is manipulated by a struggle between two different underground hidden secret societies, two different secret societies. One of them is born from Hassan I Sabah and the Assassins, and the other one is more like the right-wing conservative one, which is born out of the Bavarian Illuminati and then into the Masons and stuff. And then the way that Robert Anton Wilson spins it is the assassin cults eventually evolve into being the Discordian society. Or maybe it's the Discordians became the assassins. I can't remember which way, but they're on the same side, basically. So Discordianism is, of course, one of the basic mythological resources for modern chaos magic and that whole scene, which once you go in and you start pulling it all apart, you see that it is very much in alignment with postmodernism, Bolshevism, etc., etc. None of that is to say that chaos magic is bad. You shouldn't look into chaos magic. As a black magician, you're always exploring and delving into new areas and seeking out the mysteries, as it were, and exploring new things and trying new things. There's nothing wrong with that at all. The point is, to what end is applying? You ask yourself the question, to what end, or in service to what? On the left is the assassin cult, the liberals, and on the right is the Illuminati, the conservatives. So the fact that that particular conspiracy theory is taken up and utilized in this way and has survived this way, it's like it's fully integrated. So like Kant, the father of postmodernism, Hassan I Sabah teaches that there is no truth. Nothing is true. And if nothing is true, everything is permitted. Basically, Kant, Hegel, Foucault, Derrida, the French existentialists are simply a modern remanifestation of the assassin cults. Nothing is true, therefore everything is permitted. There is no higher truth, therefore hedonism is the only thing going on, and social justice is something that we have to work towards as a society. So it also contrasts with what you find in Sufism, or you find in surviving Zoroastrianism, the idea that there is a truth. There is a truth. Truth does exist. Now, I don't have to be able to tell you what the truth is in order to justify that. The belief in truth, the wish for truth, is enough. And that is what leads you out of the morass of chaos, which is part of the descending current of the universe. And I find it interesting also that the mythology about the hashish cult assassins is that it's also a very political organization. It's involved in and embedded and embroiled in secular politics. That's what it's all about. That corresponds very much to the modern concept of postmodernism, is embroiled in politics. It's embroiled in political correctness and social justice. It's so connected with it that it's impossible to even think and talk about postmodernism beyond an art gallery without getting into political ideas. In fact, even that's giving it too much. Any sort of postmodernist work that you look at, in some way it starts to address some sort of perspective on social injustice. To summarize, Antifa is merely a modern manifestation of the cult of the Hashishans. Here right on time for Solioonensius. So in going forth to fight the good fight, remember that the shibboleth of cultural Marxism and postmodernism is not a new phenomenon. It's an ancient worm, also known as Apep. And the struggle that you go through now is the struggle of your fathers and your fathers' fathers before them, or your mothers and your mothers' mothers before them. So whatever you are and whatever you came from, keep the dark fires burning.